Shalom and welcome. Listening to Temple Talk from the International Department of the Temple Institute in Jerusalem, Israel. I'm Rabbi Chaim Richman. With me in the studio, Yitzchak Reuven. Today, the 13th day of the month of Tammuz, 5775. It is the last day of June 30th, 2015. This Shabbat, we will be reading Parashat Balak, which is all about the heathen prophet Bilaam, who was hired by the Moabite king Balak to curse the children of Israel. How'd that work out for him? Stay tuned to the Parashat HaShavua to find out. Also, we must point out that this Shabbat actually is the 17th day of Tammuz, but the fast of the 17th day of Tammuz, which of course begins the 3-week mourning period known as Bein HaMitzarim, literally between the straits, that is the annual period of mourning for the Holy Temple, the fast itself is deferred to Sunday, the 5th day of July, and will be observed on the 18th day of Tammuz. And we've been talking a lot about Tammuz. We mentioned that it's the days of the spies' mission, how they were walking around in the land of Israel, seeing the negative. We mentioned that the astrological sign of the month of Tammuz is the sartan, the crab, and how the crab walks sideways, and for every step forward takes 2 steps backwards, does a lot of sidestepping, and that our goal in the month of Tammuz is to walk straight ahead, to fix the bad walkings, as it were, of the spies, to see only the good. Talked about the challenge of the name of Tammuz, which is literally a reminder that we have to fight the tendency that we have to worship the past, to stay within the comfort zone of the pain that we know, and the nostalgia and the romanticization of that pain, which was the cult of Tammuz, and how really, honestly, the goal of this period of mourning that we are all about to enter into now, the entire house of Israel, it's not about mourning as an end result. That's not the point of the mourning for the Holy Temple. It's about wanting to change the situation. It's about being inspired enough that there shouldn't be another cycle of mourning, that we should arise as a lion, in fact, as our dear Balaam, right, in this week's Torah portion says that we get up like a lion. We're waiting to see that happen. That was his prophecy, and we are ready to rebuild. But listen, there's a lot of incredible mystery in this week's Torah portion, with this whole thing of the union between these two mortal enemies, Moab and Midian, who joined forces out of their loathing and fear and loathing in the desert, loathing and fear of the children of Israel about to enter into the land of Israel. What is that all about? What did we do exactly? Came out of Egypt. What did we do exactly? What are we about to do to anybody? We're going home, and we're going to live our lives there. This was a very big bother to these people, and so Balak went and hired Bilaam to do his whammy on the children of Israel. He was a well-known sorcerer, and he had the glib power of communication. He was the original poster or tweeter, and he knew how to badmouth people in a way that would fix them forever.
He was a tweeter, and Balak was Ben Tzipor, right?
Right.
Son of the bird.
Exactly.
Tweeter.
Wow.
There you go.
There you go. Listen, I gotta tell you something, Yitzchak, heavy on my heart. As you know, last night here in Israel, there was a drive-by shooting. 4 people were injured, one of them grievously. My understanding at this particular moment is that he may be out of the realm of mortal danger. I hope so. We're all praying for his name. His name is Malachi Menachem ben Sarah. He already has a brother that was killed in a terror incident. And of course, this incident took place right on the road that my own children use every day, very close to the area that they live in. In fact, my wife is there at this very moment in a kindergarten celebration for one of the grandchildren. And indeed, I myself am building a home there. So this is part of Israel where we all live and where we're all home here. And this is the kind of thing that goes on every day. So of course, I was up this morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, which is when I happen to be getting up anyway to go to the mikveh, to go to the Temple Mount. And I see the WhatsApps from my kids saying, "Don't worry, everybody, we're okay." I didn't even know what happened. First thing that everybody has to do is let everybody know that everyone is okay. Of course, some people are not okay. We talked about how, last week, right, how this month of Ramadan, which is some sort of evil twinner in a way, to the concept of the Jewish month of Elul, in that the month of Ramadan is hyped up to be this month of spiritual growth, introspection, charitable works. What is that expression we found on the internet? Wholehearted, closest to God, or something like that. The fact is, I was emphasizing in our last broadcast about how it's being celebrated in Israel with murderous attacks against Jews. Since that broadcast already, we had a female IDF soldier that was stabbed at Rachel's tomb. We had numerous incidents here in Israel. And of course, again, last night there was a drive-by shooting of Jewish people very close to home for me and for my children. But for a moment, let's not talk about what's going on in Israel. Let's talk about Ramadan all over the world, okay? And then I'll get back to Israel, okay? So according to this Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which is a British-based monitoring group, right? 3,000 people. That's 3,000 people have been executed by Islamic State, right, ISIS, in Syria in the past year. 1,787 of them civilians, and 74 of them children. But 223 at least in the past week alone. So there you have 223 people executed by ISIS in Syria in the past week. And have you been following the news about the new killing machines that they've developed? I've been reading about it here in Israel. They have this special kind of like necklace that they put around someone's head with that they detonate and it blows your head off. They have this cage that they put people in and submerge them in water and watch them drown. They made a father stone his own daughter to death and video it. I mean, it's unbelievable. You can call them, monstrous, or you can call them whatever words, but I don't really think that's it. So let's go to Boston for a minute, because I'm from Boston. My soul, happened to touch down in Boston 56 years ago in some cosmic time and space continuum warp. That's where I came into the world, right? And so I have a certain kind of attachment to Boston Marathon, right? So you have baby-faced Zakar Tazarnev, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Tsarnaev, right? That we already had the scandal last year of Rolling Stone putting his face on the cover of their magazine, right? And talking about like how he's also a victim and all this kind of thing. So as you may know, he was sentenced to death 4 times, and an additional 20 life sentences as well. And of course, the word is that it's very unlikely that this death sentence will be carried out for our baby-faced Islamic murderer in Boston, because of the fact that since the death penalty was reinstated in the United States on a federal level since 1988, only 3 people were put to death, because, it could take years. In fact, they're saying it could take decades, if at all, because there's going to be appeals. But the point is, he was sentenced to death. So at his sentencing, I want you to listen very carefully, because I'm going somewhere here with this. At his sentencing, he expressed remorse, and he said that he was so sorry for the pain that he caused and all this kind of thing. And his 5-minute speech was peppered with many religious references and references to Allah there in Boston. The liberal Boston press, the liberal Boston media, there were voices that were saying how unfortunate it is that he mentioned Allah, and he shouldn't have done that. That was a mistake, because this is not about Allah. It's not about Allah. This is, whatever. It's about this young man. It's not about Allah. In other words, they're saying, We'll tell you why you did this. We know you didn't do it because of your religion. We'll tell you why you did this, right? Switch for a moment, though, to the church shooting that happened the week before in the United States, where a crazy young white supremacist opened fire on a black church. There's a lot of breastfeeding going on in America, and they're talking about banning the Confederate flag, which is a symbol of Southern nationalistic feelings. They're talking about how it's our fault as Americans because we're a nation of racists, because it's our culture, because it's a slave owner mentality, because of all these things. It's all one big, broad mea culpa. It's our fault. When it comes to the white fellow who opened fire on a black church in America, which is a horrible thing, but they're saying it's our fault because this is how we're raising people. But when it came to Tsarnaev in Boston, who said that this is for the cause and it's about Allah, they said no, that can't be it. That can't be it. What is my point? As you know, Yitzchak, where I'm going with this, my point is very simply that you're never allowed to say that it's about Islam in America. You're never allowed to say that. So not only is Ramadan being celebrated in Israel by attempting to murder Jews and by all of these horrible acts of terror, like the one that happened last night, right, the drive-by shooting. But if you open up your eyes and you listened for a half a second to what I just said when I read these horrible statistics about how at least 223 people were murdered last week in Syria by Islamic State, and where is the world outcry and all the Christians that are being massacred and everything that's going on, right? But you know what? The UN compiled a report about the Israeli war crimes in the Gaza war. And you know what? Just today, Israel is expelling the president of Tunisia, who should talk because they just had a horrible massacre in Tunisia perpetrated by Islamic State also on the beach of tourists, right, from many countries. But there's this flotilla on the way to break the naval blockade of Gaza. Why does the IDF maintain a naval blockade of Gaza? Because Gaza run by Hamas, receives these materials that they use to create a terrorist infrastructure, even though Netanyahu points out we have allowed the equivalent of 500,000 boatfuls of humanitarian aid into Gaza, but there's still the European leftists and the intellectuals and the freedom fighters and the anti-Semites. They're all the same thing, as you'll see when we start talking about who Bilaam was. They're all working towards one goal, and that is to break the naval blockade, supposedly, around Gaza, to provide them with humanitarian aid. Funny, the Navy alighted, is that the word? Onto these boats and found no humanitarian aid whatsoever. And so while the world is ignoring the butchery of 233 people in Syria last week, while British Prime Minister Cameron, I just read a headline before coming to microphone today, the United Kingdom Prime Minister said that ISIS is planning horrible attacks in Britain. All this is going on, and you know what? The world is walking like the crab of Tammuz. The world is walking sideways, sidestepping the whole issue, not looking at it in the face, looking, another aspect of Tammuz, right? Looking in a crazy way. And it's like coming soon to a theater near you, beheadings. Did I mention the beheading that took place in France at the gas company, which, by the way, was an American-owned gas company, which was a statement to America how they drove up and they started throwing all sorts of incendiary devices trying to make explosions, and how they took a guy and cut his head off and draped it in a flag with Islamic statements on it and pinned his head to the fence. This just happened in France. So all this is going on in Ramadan, which is the month of benevolence, introspection, spiritual advancement, charity, love. This is all going on right around us all the time, and we can't look it in the face. We walk sideways. We don't talk about it. You know why? Because you're never allowed to say that there's a problem with Islam. Does it emanate from the Islamic White House,
was
I don't
just,
know. I don't even care if he is a Muslim, if he isn't a Muslim, because whether or not he's a Muslim, he is the great enabler. And his policies and his attitudes and everything that he has caused to happen in this world, at which he promised at the speech that he gave in the university at Cairo, was that it would be a safer world. The world has become more dangerous, more unstable, more unsafe, more violent than ever before in our time. And it's because of him, and I think it's his agenda. But the fact is, when they take these Muslims, a housewife or at a laundromat in Cincinnati or something, and she abhors these kind of things and everything like that, you know what I say? Don't tell me that it's because you're talking about radical Islam, you're talking about fundamentalist Islam. I disagree. I think it's a big mistake also when the Israeli politicians and diplomats talk about radical Islam. I don't think there is any radical Islam. I don't think it's a question of fundamentalist or radical Islam. I think it's about Islam. And when the people eschew it or abhor it that are interviewed, you know why? It's because they're not religious. That's why. It's not because these are extremists and these aren't. It's because those ones must be completely secular, because anyone who identifies with Islam as a way of life, welcome to Ramadan. Welcome to the world of rape, murder, stoning, and most of all, beheading. And did I mention when I mentioned that the litany of horrific, murderous innovation and devices that they've invented, like blowing people's heads off their bodies with detonating devices, and lowering people into swimming pools in cages and watching them drown, and forcing fathers to stone their own daughters to death? Did I mention about the child on the video that they posted, that they have a child beheading someone as well? It's about beheadings. It's about Islam. And this is the way it's going to continue until somebody has the audacity to stand up and say, whether or not you think it's politically correct, this is about Islam. We've been saying it for years. We pay the price. This is what it's about. And it's time to look at it face on, and that's why the world can ignore Christians being butchered, 233 people being killed in Syria, children being sold as sex slaves, which all you have to do is push a button on the internet to find out these things. It's not like I'm making it up. It's not like I'm pulling something over on you. If you want to know, it's out there. It's mainstream media. They just have to bury it, right? Just like they buried the story about the beheading that took place in Oklahoma a while back. They have to bury these stories, but it's happening right now. Yes, ISIS is selling children as sex slaves. That's Islam for you. But the point is that the world can ignore all of that, but they can send a flotilla to Israel to break Israel's horrible hold over the wonderful people of Hamas, of Gaza, and they can make yet another UN report about Israel's crimes in Gaza in the war in which we were defending our very existence and our right to live. That's how it goes. And I have a slight suspicion that we learn all about this in this week's Torah portion. And just as a little teaser, not a spoiler, but as a little teaser, I think in this week's video lesson, available on YouTube and on the Temple Institute's Facebook page, where we talk about the portion of Balak, I think we're going to go a little deeper into the why. Because what I'm really interested in is why. What do we do so bad that that Balak has to send Bilaam to stand up on a ridge and look down on us and curse us? What did we do exactly? Did we change the course of river? Are we polluting the moon and stars? Like, what exactly did we do that everybody else gets ignored, especially the major force of evil in the world that is beheading people to the right and left of you, listener? But everything always comes back to the problem of Israel. I'm going to take a sip of this coffee now while Yitzchak fills in for me.
I'd just like to add one thing to your litany, Rabbi. I was just reading an article yesterday evening about a Christian pastor in Ireland who gave a sermon, about 5 or 10 minutes of which were concerned with Islam, and he said Islam was a horrible pagan religion of violence, and now he faces up to 6 years in prison for defaming Islam in Ireland. 78-year-old pastor, I believe. So yeah, not only is it not politically correct, but it's a crime to what you said today. Could if you were in Ireland, they might not let you set foot there.
They might not even let me say it here either.
You might get thrown in prison for 6 years for saying the truth.
And at least he gets 3 squares a day, and I'm sure that it's halal. I'm sure that it's guaranteed, because that is absolutely enshrined in law all over Europe, that you have to be provided with halal food.
Yeah. I was going to say earlier, Rabbi, that I've never felt so at home and familiar with this week's Parashat with Balak as I do this year, because we always, it's an end of day scenario, and we always talk about it in present tense. We always have in Temple Talk, but never before this year have I felt like we are so much in the middle of it. They're all over, with that one eye shut and squinting, and everybody's hiring the next person to put a whammy on us, just like the women who are hired on the Temple Mount to put a whammy on us, and just like, the great statesmen and Nobel Peace Prize winners of the world, and
Pink Floyd, and
they're all in cahoots with another person, exchanging the money to put a curse on us. And the other thing that interests me, beginning earlier on in the Numbers, book of Numbers, we had the incident of the spies. And the spies, the real crime of the spies is that we thought of ourselves as grasshoppers in the eyes of our enemies, right? But our enemies see us as covering the earth. We're so massive and so powerful. And it's the same today. We view ourselves as being, these little things that we can't upset this, and we can't upset the King of Jordan, so we can't have Jews praying at Temple Mount, and we can't upset the President of the United States, and we can't upset the President of Prime Minister of France, or this one or that one, because we're so meek and timid, and someone might step on us and squash us, yet the world sees us as being all-powerful and a threat. Just like you said at the very
and that's
beginning
exactly
of the show.
what Balak said to Bilaam. He said, Rav Yatzami Mitzrayim. He said, a mighty people came out of Egypt, and now they're covering up the eye of the earth. What is that? I want you to know. You want a spoiler?
Yeah, I want to spoil.
On this week's Lights and Nations video lesson on the Torah portion, I want to talk about what does this unusual expression mean that they're covering the eye of the earth. I mean, there's an eye of the earth. We learned that there's a mouth of the earth when Korach got swallowed up into it. Now there's an eye of the earth. What does that really mean? Because all of a sudden I realized that's the secret of what's going on here, if we can figure out what those words mean. But the fact is, it is Ramadan, and that means you've got to really watch yourself, because the Muslims are in a very spiritual mood. They are repenting, they are being charitable, they're full of love, and thus they are out for blood, for murder, pillage, rape, stoning, and most of all, beheadings. But hey, stay with us. Temple Talk. We'll be right back. Hold on to your head.
Shalom and welcome back to Temple Talk. Today, the 13th day of the month of Tammuz, 5775, 30th day of June, 2015. This is Yitzchak Reuven with me in the studio, Rabbi Chaim Richman, who has been making your hair stand on end with stories about, true stories, I'll add.
Facts,
about
man,
ISIS,
facts.
About the month of Ramadan, about the Islamic way, which Muslim world is trying to impose on the rest of the world. And as the rabbi said, soon at a theater near you, God forbid. But Rabbi, if you allow me to just make a little, take a little pause here amidst all the mayhem and madness of the world, and talk about a few good things that are happening. And guess what? I think the good things that we're going to talk about are all yuzmot, are all initiatives of the Temple Institute. First thing I'd like to announce, Rabbi, is that we have just posted a video that documents an event that took place about a month ago, which is right after the holiday of Shavuot, when the Temple Institute, along with the women on behalf of the Holy Temple, performed a reenactment of the first fruit offerings and the twin loaves offerings as it was performed in the Holy Temple, together with the Kohanim, the priests of the Temple Institute's Nezer HaKodesh School for Kohanim. It was done in Jerusalem overlooking the Temple Mount, and we have just put out a short, I think a 3.5-minute video, a quick coverage of this very, very colorful and exciting event. Again, another step in the process of reacquainting the people of Israel with the service of the Holy Temple, and reawakening in the people the desire to restart the service in the Holy Temple, to rebuild the Holy Temple. That's what we're all about. And speaking of which, in just under 2 weeks, well, actually, I should say on the 16th of July, we will be holding our 34th annual conference about the Holy Temple.
Conference on Temple Research.
That is, the Temple Institute has for 34 years now been holding this conference. It's become part of the
annual conference,
of the landscape of the 3 weeks, because of course our emphasis always is not on mourning and not on nostalgia, as you mentioned earlier, but on building and on preparation and on educating people toward achieving and rebuilding the Holy Temple, and reconstructing ourselves as a people and as a nation that is based around the Holy Temple and the Shekhinah, God's presence in the Holy Temple. And this conference, again, this year, as in past years, will attract rabbanim, rabbis, and scholars from around Israel who will be speaking and attending and taking part in the day's activity, because it's basically a day-long conference.
Kind of a symposium. It's going to be very exciting this year. There are going to be some very exciting and inspiring topics that we're going to be announcing very soon, as well as the venue and the times. And as you said, it's become a tradition, and these are presentations on a very high level of scholarship that add very, very much to the public discourse and understanding of the significance of the temple. And also, you know, we mentioned the reenactment of the twin loaves, the first fruits, and you called it a step. It's really more like a milestone, because all of these reenactments and exercises that we've been hosting over the past year, according to the cycle of the year, with the Kohanim that are in training in the special school, and with the priestly garments, and with the vessels and the instruments, it's really such a positive step in for the people of Israel, because the excitement that you feel at these events, and the hundreds of people that come, the children and old people and people from all over the country that are just literally hungry for an experience of authenticity, of what it really means to be in the place of God's presence, and what these biblical commandments are really all about. So it's a huge undertaking, and it's very, really revolutionary in Jewish thought that we're seeing this happen.
I'm always very moved by the young children who attend, because for you and me, this is a milestone, you know, in our after decades and decades and decades of working toward these things. For children, this is their first step, and for them it's such a natural thing, and they grow up with this, and so for them the next step will, of course, you know, be a major step toward bringing the reality of the Holy Temple into a reality.
Remember when you and me were in the army together, Yitzchak? Back in the day when we met. Back in the day when you saved my life. There's a story I haven't told in a while. We might have a whole new generation of Temple Talk listeners that never heard the story of the bullet that you took from me. Ouch. But remember when we used to be in basic training, or even afterwards, when we used to have a practice drill for an actual event that we would have to be involved with, whether it was some sort of incursion or some sort of event. First we would have the practice, and then we would do the real thing, also in practice, but we used to call the practice drill yavesh, which means dry, which means that we wouldn't actually do it with bullets. We would go through the whole thing, all the maneuvering and all the plan of how we would, let's say, take a particular hill or something like that. And then we used to do it again, wet, meaning that we used to actually do it with live ammunition so that we would all know our positions and everything like that. So that's exactly what's going on here now, is that we're doing it now as the first stage, and the next stage is the real thing, live, and we're raising a whole generation that will know exactly how to do these things and that are reconnecting to what these mitzvot are really all about.
It's very exciting. And speaking of exciting, over the next coming weeks, we have 2 events.
Whoa, wait a minute here.
Earth-shattering, paradigm-shifting.
Wait a minute now, Yitzchak.
You know, the rabbi's the one who usually speaks in hyperbole, and Yitzchak, old Yitzchak here, is very understated. Well, roll over, Rabbi.
Whoa.
Because Yitzchak's here to say that we have some announcements coming up over the next few weeks, that one of them actually on the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, that will shake your world. They will change everything. When you wake up in the morning, you will see things differently.
The only thing that you can possibly announce on the 9th of Av that would have that power is that we're rebuilding the temple.
Well, wait and see.
Okay.
Exactly what we're going to announce on the 9th of Av. And before the 9th of Av, we have, again, a milestone, like a light year milestone in the advancement toward the building of the Holy Temple. So again, you know me, I'm not the rabbi. I'm usually
what are you trying to say?
I'm usually understated. But if you hear it from me, from Yitzchak, this is a real thing. We're not playing around. So just stay tuned. Be listening to Temple Talk. Be going to our Facebook page every day.
Can we say a little bit more to the people? Can we tell them that this is...
when you go to the
corner... Can we tell them that both of these things are the result...
Ask the guy behind the counter if he's heard anything new.
Decades, the fruit of decades of labor and integrity and diligence and work. Nothing less than that. This is absolutely, honestly, from the king of hyperbole, earth-shattering. This is an earth-shattering game changer and a day in the life of the rebuilding of the Holy Temple.
So that's all we can say.
For now.
Getting back to our parasha.
So, again, I just find it amazing that the flotilla participants sailing from Crete on the way to Israel to make a statement about how horrible the Jews are, with a little bit of a slight shift of the angle of their navigation, they could have gone to Syria, where they really are needed.
They would have been beheaded.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention that. But the point is, they actually are making a mistake. Maybe there's an optical illusion or something in their eye. Ooh, something in their eye reminds me of Bilaam with his one eye. Or reminds me of the fact that the whole challenge of Tammuz is to fix our vision. But the fact is, they're on their way here because they have got to make a statement about our stranglehold over the good folks of Hamas in Gaza. But again, where is the world's outcry? Where are all these peace activists and humanitarians when it comes to the 3,000 people executed in Syria by ISIS in the past year alone? 223 people in 1 week this past week. Did you hear a whimper, a sound, a protest? Did you even know that? Did you even hear that figure anywhere? Anyway, of course, the most professional Israel haters in the world, most of them at least, not the crude ones, but the very sophisticated ones, they'll tell you that this isn't about the Jews. They have nothing about the Jews. It's about the Zionists. It's about Zionism, right? It's about Zionism. That's what their problem is. And that is, of course, the legitimate anti-Semitism. And where is it emanating from? The hallowed halls of the universities, especially on the West Coast and on the East Coast.
Even in the middle.
In the middle as well?
It's gotten that far.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the anti-Israel stand of the universities, divestment and boycott and sanctions and all this coming from the universities is one level, and then you have coming also from organizations, Christian organizations, church organizations, talking about divestment and all these things. And then at the political level as well, of course, the United States State Department doesn't even recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel under any circumstances whatsoever. We had this landmark case that went to the Supreme Court just 2 weeks ago, where folks that had children born in Jerusalem wanted the children's passports to be able to say Jerusalem, Israel is their place of birth. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said no. We're not contradicting the State Department ruling that does not recognize Jerusalem as being Israel. And speaking of which, I know that Yitzchak and I, it being the 30th of June today, just yesterday, we had the occasion to fill out online a certain form required of American citizens living abroad. We are, of course, still American citizens as well as Israeli citizens. I won't tell you the name of that form because I can't even get it out of my throat. I can't even say the word. But we had to fill out a certain form. And I couldn't help noticing on the online submission form, in the pull-down menu, when you have to fill in the country of where you're living to fill out this form, that Israel is an option. And there's another option called occupied territory of Palestine, which of course actually means, Yitzchak, pardon me for mentioning this to our listeners, but it's where both of you and I live officially. You living in Ma'ale Adumim and me living in a northern suburb of Jerusalem. We live in occupied Palestine. So the State Department doesn't even recognize any of the places where we live, where our children live, as even being Israel. But this is on an official United States document that has to be sent back to the governments. It is all occupied.
Well, it's all occupied, even Tel Aviv, even Haifa, even Beersheba, it's all occupied, because obviously the only unoccupied Palestine is Ramallah, where Palestinian rule. So we are definitely occupied Palestine.
But listen, Yitzchak, I brought up this thing about the universities and everything, and where I was going with that was, as we've mentioned in past years, very fascinating teachings that our sages have given over to us about Bilaam, that I think is just so amazingly prophetically contemporary. And as I mentioned on our video lesson this week, we want to go in a different direction regarding what was said and where maybe the motivation of this power of hatred of Israel is coming from. That's a really interesting direction. But in the meantime, we have these amazing midrashim that talk about Bilaam, and they talk about the fact that he was a great philosopher, and he was an amazing orator, and he had this incredible mind. You know, he was in an unbelievable academic, and
I bet he was good looking too.
Maybe he was, and he also had the potential to be a great leader. He had the potential to be a holy person as well, like a parallel to Moses himself. And he had this very unique relationship with God, with the one God, with the God of Israel. He was on very intimate terms with him, but on different kind of terms. He was kind of like on illicit terms, on shameful terms, on manipulative terms. But this description of how he was kind of like a philosopher, and he cloaked himself in this academia and in this great knowledge, on the one hand. On the other hand, he was this holy man, you know, this wizard, this miracle worker, wrapped in this cloak of this kind of heathen occult prophecy. These descriptions remind me of the manifestation of the Jew hatred today, as far as BDS, you know, like how it's coming from the halls of academia in the name of human rights. And then look at the flotilla activists, instead of going to Syria where 3,000 people have been killed, coming to Israel to complain about the way we're treating the Palestinians. It reminds me of all of these haters, you know, speaking in the name of religion, speaking in the name of everything that's right and good, and blaming all of the world's ills on Israel. Look at the United Nations. Look at, again, the report on Israel's treatment of the Palestinians during the war, in which we fought because they were raining thousands of missiles down upon us. Look at Ramadan, the celebration of Ramadan, as we speak, all over the world, beheading in France, pin the guy's head up to the fence of the gas company, okay, Tsarnaev in Boston, and ISIS and everything that's going on all over the world, and of course the murderous attacks here in Israel, and nobody seems to be bothered by that. Moab and Midian can unite, put aside their differences, focus on the tremendous problem, the tremendously disproportionate problem of the people of Israel.
Whether it's Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority, and Pope Francis.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Who recently, Pope Francis, the Vatican recognized the state of Palestine, whether it's them who are teaming up or whether it's President Obama and the Supreme Leader Khomeini of Iran who are teaming up to do the deed. It seems to be another truth, another verity first expressed and exposed in the Parashat of the methodology of anti-Semitism, if you will, of anti-Zionism, if you will. They team up. And the other truth exposed in the Parsha is the connection, the collusion between the hatred and money. Balak offered Bilaam money, a lot of money. The reason BDS? The reason BDS is emanating from the universities today is because for decades Saudi Arabia has been endowing American universities with millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Ouch.
And in return getting their say in who the professors are, especially in the Middle Eastern studies and the humanities. And now, it's paying off for them.
And it's not only the universities, and some in particular, it's foundations all over the United States that endow all sorts of corporations and all sorts of individuals and research. It's all coming from Saudi Arabia.
And the European Union, their governments are funding nonprofit organizations whose sole purpose is to smear the name of Israel. It's all, follow the money trail. That's where it comes from. That's why it's big business, and who can resist? It's big business. You want to get rich? Become a Jew hater.
By the way, you're reminding me. Speaking of Jew haters, you're reminding me of this other incredible revelation that was just in the press about John Kerry's shares.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
John Kerry has $1 million worth of shares or something in the gas exploration off of the coast of Israel. So he has something to say about it. He has some interest here. That's not just. In
a particular company, he was in a particular
company. So all his interest in the Middle East is not simply
altruistic. Pressure was put on Israel. In fact, there's an article today about Don Shapiro, how pressure was put on Israel to stay with this particular company, and it was not known at that time that Kerry had $1 million worth of personal interest in that company. Honest broker.
Yeah, honest broker.
The point is, all of these things, there's a tremendous confluence all the time of what's going on around us, of the Torah portion, of the essence, the root, the motivation of these processes that seem set against us, just as we are poised to enter into the land of Israel, as it was in Parashat Balak. And of course, the month of Tammuz, somewhat predisposed in revealing these kind of dynamics and levels within the human psyche and within our own potential. It's all about seeing. It's about fixing the seeing, fixing the walking of the spies and their seeing positive, mostly within ourselves, within each other, all around us, and all of us together here in this land to make it into the land that Bilaam honestly saw when he said, "How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling place is Israel." And he knew very well that Israel would come into the land, and that we would set a progression in motion that would bring about the state of redemption and the state of rectification for the whole world. That's what Israel is all about. That's the problem, if you ask me. That's the problem that everybody is so set against, and they'd rather just fall into the gaping, obscene maw of Islamic bloodlust rather than just allow Israel to flourish and bring its blessing into the world. And it all just comes from basically a desire to be on the side of evil and to give in to the most base instincts that a person can sink to. That's what Islam represents, and that's what those who allay themselves against Israel also are choosing. They're all choosing their way. And you know what? The judge who sentenced Dzhokhar Tatarniev in Boston to 4 death sentences and 20 life sentences, you know what he said when he issued that sentence, which of course will never happen because that's America for you, land of the free and the home of the brave. He quoted Shakespeare, and he said, the evil deeds committed by a man will outlive him and will remain in the world after he's gone. And that's exactly true. And people are just choosing which side they want to be on. So let's hope and pray that as part of our own tikkun for this month of Tammuz, that we will choose the side of rights, and that when we begin this cycle of mourning for the Holy Temple this coming Sunday, for the 17th day of Tammuz, that we will be fasting and mourning in order to rebuild. And our focus will be on rebuilding the Holy Temple.
Absolutely, and don't forget, as we said, in the coming weeks, very major, fascinating, exciting announcements that we'll be making. Thanks for being with us. Temple Talk.